Hey everybody, it's Derek and welcome back to CRM Tip of the Day's Video Tips, your source for tips and step-by-step instruction on the latest version of Microsoft Dynamics CRM. So in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about survey questions. In the very first video we did, when we did just a quick little overview, we showed you just how to get a question in there, but we didn't really talk about all the unique things that you can do with questions. And so that's one of the things that we want to talk a little bit about is, what are some of the options that you have when you design these questions for these surveys moving forward. So we're back in a survey that we originally created in our very first video, and let's go ahead and just do some question stuff and show you some of the options that are available. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag this rating question over into my area. And we'll just say, how would you rate the agent's politeness? And then save it. Now, one of the things I can do here is I can hit edit. And so this gives me some of the different options that I have available based upon what it is. And now the different types of questions will have, different formatting options that you can tweak as you're working with them, different appearance options, layout options. Some of them will even have some scoring options based upon what it is that you want to do. So if I come down in here, one of the things that I see, because this is a ratings question, is I can define how I want to do this. Okay, do I want to use kind of a star rating? Do I want to use a flag rating? Or do I want to actually have smiley faces? So in this case, I could go ahead and rate the smiley faces from sad to happy. I could give them the option then to kind of define for each one as they hover over it what that option looks like, and I could edit each one of these individual items if I wanted to. I also have, based upon what it is, the ability to define the number of items. Now, if this was a star-based scenario, if I were to switch this back to a star-based scenario, you'll see that I can edit this. Since this is a smiley face, sad to happy, they only have a set number of options available, so you don't necessarily have the capabilities to do, a ton with this as far as modifying the number of items that are being displayed. I also have the capabilities to define the question layout. So how do I want this to be laid out? Do I want the question to be on top and the answer below? Do I want them to be left aligned? How do I want them to take up space on the survey based upon those items? And you also see that I have the option to control the visibility. Much like you would do with business rules, surveys actually have what are called response routing capabilities, where you can actually choose to display certain elements of a survey based upon answers to previous questions. And that's something we can talk about a little bit in another video. Now, being that this is a ratings question, the other thing that you'll see down here is this scoring definition. And so you can actually assign different scoring levels for each individual question that you're working with. And then that way, as people are taking these surveys, they actually have the capabilities to go in and, get a score associated with them. And then you can do what are called alert tasks, where you can actually set a scoring threshold for the survey. And if a survey falls below that particular score for a specific respondent, you can actually be alerted to that fact and then work with some of the information from there. Now, the other options that you have is you can do what are called linked questions. This is where you can actually link questions together. These can be questions in the same survey, or these can be questions in different surveys based upon your specific needs. But this is really more used for reporting purposes. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can customize the question a little bit. And if you remember one of the previous videos we did in regards to survey distribution, we talked a little bit about piping in CRM data. And so one of the things that you can do is you can actually include CRM data or specific data. And they're defined as kind of name value pairs. And we showed you that in the distribution option, where you can actually associate a specific item with a CRM item. So instead of this saying, how would I rate the agent's politeness, maybe I want this to actually define the name of the person who worked on the case. And so one of the options you see in this editor is to pipe. And so what I can do is, these are the options, and these are the only options that you have available. Now, they've kind of defined them based upon specific use cases that you might use them for, but really they're just string fields. So I mean, even though it says user, you could really feed that in with any data that you wanted to, because it's going to come in as a string value. So these just give you the capabilities to use, kind of custom options that you might be working with. So in this case, if I wanted this to be the user that was associated with it, I could click on user, and now when that survey is distributed, it'll actually have can have the name of the user included in the email. So when the survey opens up, now it's going to pre-populate that information with the user that worked with it. So this is, a great way that you can customize these questions and really kind of provide a very unique look to them as you're moving forward. So now if I were to go ahead and close out of here, now I can see that I've got my smiley face options that people can click on, and it also is defined that the pipe data is in there. Now, obviously, once the survey is actually distributed, you will actually see the name of the representative that's worked with that. Now, they've included, many different types of questions. There's multiple rating scenarios where you can list questions in column order if you wanted to. They also have kind of a ranking type of question that you could use. So in this ranking situation, this is where I can actually go in and define specific items and have the person who's taking the survey rank them in a predefined order. So I could say something like, how would you rank the following? And then now I can put my responses in here. And this would be where they can then go ahead and kind of define them. So I'm going to say Monday, Tuesday, Now, you also have the capabilities as you're working through this, you can kind of define how you want this to really be defined. So you can actually have it defined if it wants to randomize things. So as people are taking these surveys, they have different experiences. You can determine how you want them to work with it. So they can actually select responses and then move them over individual items, or you can just have a list and then they can reorder things around based upon those items. So this kind of gives you just, some additional options that you can use to add some visual dynamics to your survey. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And now it shows the information in from here. And if I were to go ahead and preview this, I can hit next. And so here's kind of my options. So here's my smiley faces that we've defined. Now I can go ahead and I can select Monday. I can move it over. I can then maybe take Wednesday, move it over, Thursday, move it over. And then I can even, as I'm going through, maybe even Friday, move it over. And then I can move things up and down depending upon what I want to do. Now, this is just one way that it can be presented. You can have all the items just in a list, and then you can have them reorder things around accordingly based upon those different situations. But the nice thing about this is it really gives you the capabilities to add some very nice dynamic elements. They even have, net promoter scores that work on kind of a slider element, all sorts of different options as you're working through. Then just a couple other things to remember about surveys, and particularly survey questions. You're limited, not really limited, that's a lot of questions, but you are limited to 250 questions per survey. Now that's only for surveys that actually are using the responses. If you're doing feedback surveys where you're actually having it create the entity and create the feedback survey and doing feedback generation, that's actually limited to 40 questions because those are considered longer running surveys. Those are surveys that you would be doing entities for, and we'll talk a little bit about feedback in a future video. So it's 250 questions per survey, 40 if it's enabled for feedback, and you are limited to 25 pages per survey. So that's something to keep in mind when you're designing these surveys. And then just as another side note, you are limited right now to 200 published surveys. You can only publish 200 surveys when you're working with Voice of the Customer. But that's going to do it for our questions overview. Hopefully you found it informative. And like I said, I would play with some of the other types of options that are out there. There's some pretty cool stuff. Moving forward, we will kind of continue going through some of the analytic pieces and some of the design elements and show you some of the cool things you can do to kind of drive people in the direction you want to go with your survey. So that's going to do it for this week's video. Again, for all of us here at CRM Tip of the Day, this has been Derek saying take care, everybody. Thank you and have a good one.